What's up YouTube? Today we are looking at the brand new release from Lunacy Audio. So this one is a double feature, both devices in collaboration with Ben Jordan. So before we get started, you need to know that this is a sponsored video. However, that being said, I was involved in the release doing some work with the presets and that kind of thing. So I'm already a little bit biased. So just take that into account in terms of my opinion or anything like that. So there are two devices here. One is a plugin which can run both inside Beam, which is Lunacy Audio's multi-effects device. It can also run just directly inside your DAW. And the other one is a kind of like update or add-on for Beam, which I think is actually incredibly special because not many other plugins actually offer something like this. So they'll be running both Taps and Portal, the two devices together, at an intro price of $29, and then thereafter it'll go up to $59. So anyway, without blabbering too much, let's dive in and have a look at the brand new devices. Okay, so let's start with Taps, which is a multi-tap delay. So like I said, this one you can use both as a standalone VST plugin, or you can load it inside Beam, which is Lunacy Audio's multi-effects host. Here we can drag taps in as we want to. But just for simplicity of this video, I'm going to just use the standalone plugin, and we're going to have a look at the kind of Beam integration a little bit later on. So I've also just got a really simple pluck over here, just a single note, because I really want to show you how you can kind of really create these diverse rhythms and even, melodies and stuff using the taps system here. So this is really clever here, how you can choose whether you want to divide or multiply the time signature. So say, for example, if we have a 4-bar loop here and we want to divide this a specific amount of times, it's much easier. We can kind of set this to 1 bar, 1 over 1, divide it by 8 times, or times it by 8, and it just makes it really easy to figure out. So for example here, we want to divide the bar by 8, or we could say, let's go with 1 over 16 times. So it's a really clever way of kind of like figuring out the time signature of your tap delays. So let's set this to 1 over 1, 8 divided. So I'm not going to go into the feedback now because we already have this looping section, but this can get really interesting if you don't have a loop and you kind of want to create these more experimental delay stuff. You can kind of make this feedback over and over again. So for example, I'm just going to play a single note and you'll hear that that rhythm kind of stops after the 8 taps. But we can actually set the feedback up. And at that point, it starts acting like a traditional delay, which is pretty cool. Like I said, for these kind of loopy things, we don't necessarily need the feedback too much, but having it is really, really awesome. So here in the spacing section, we have various settings here. Fade is kind of like an envelope in and out. This one is specifically cool for creating these kind of fade-ins. It kind of creates a rhythmic crescendo out of just a single sound, and it's just super simple to do. Really, really cool. And then ping pong obviously pans each of the taps either left and then right, or vice versa. even just simple stuff like that, it's just really easy to kind of like play with to create these kind of more experimental rhythms that maybe you wouldn't have just come up with, you know. Super inspiring. So then we have cluster and skew, which kind of similar, except skew kind of bends it exponentially, where a cluster kind of just like moves them all left or right, if that makes sense. So this kind of creates a rhythmic curve where this kind of just moves them. And so these kind of take things a little bit off time, so they're not as cool for creating these kind of more snapped rhythms. But this can be really cool at like faster tempos to create almost like granular experimental micro rhythms and that kind of thing. I'll look into those shortly, but I want to show you some of these other settings here, which are particularly cool for this kind of looping stuff. So we have swing as well, which is really cool for a delay plugin. And then stereo, which is just a slight offset between the left and right. So my favorite thing here is actually this pitch section. So this essentially kind of divides your 8 taps into 8 steps in a sequencer, and then you can re-pitch each of the steps using this sequencer that's built in here. So there's various different modes. The default one obviously doesn't sound as intense in terms of a pitch shifter, but some of these other ones are really, really cool for creating, like taking like a single pluck and creating like a sequence out of it. Remember, that's just that single pluck sound. And we're creating like almost like a modular-ish ambient sequence out of this. Really, really cool. Now combining this with like the fade and the ping pong and the swing, super good stuff. Then we have various tape emulation settings, wow, drop, flutter, and dust. So crazy. So I want to set it up in a kind of more subtle way. So let's just default it real quick. and I want to set up a melody over here. Let's play, I think it was this one. So here I want to turn off the pitch mode, and I want to set it to time so that it's not synced, right? And then we can create these kind of like micro rhythms by skewing these left and right, and then also fading it in and out. Almost to sound like a kind of granular system. So good. So good. So let's have a look at Portals. So Portals is a feedback system for Beam. And this is really, really interesting because we can kind of create nested portals within portals. So you can have this kind of feedback system with a mini feedback system inside. It's kind of crazy, you know, how creative you can get with the routing now inside Beam. So we could also have a system where we have like a feed from outside the feedback loop kind of feeding into the feedback loop and all sorts of weird stuff like that. So really, really sick. I think this definitely puts Beam in its own category because not many other third-party plugins allow this kind of crazy feedback routing and stuff. So one thing to note is it's not zero latency, of course. The lowest time that we can get to is 20 milliseconds. But I think with feedback stuff, that's kind of understandable. There needs to be some kind of buffer size, right? Especially if you're going to be able to load like plugins in between and that kind of thing, or other effects in between. I'm not a DSP expert, but I do know that there needs to be some kind of processing, and that processing obviously takes time. I really like using portals in combination with taps, like we were just using it to kind of create that kind of granular stuff, as well as Beam's other granular thing, grains. This is really, really cool way of kind of creating a granular system that kind of feeds back into itself. And so it's kind of almost generative in the fact that you can kind of feed it a single sound and it'll kind of go on for a very long time. Let's just set it up here. So let's give it some feedback here. Let's do 8 taps, skew and cluster, ping pong, fade. so good, so textureful, and kind of just from that very, very simple pluck sound, right? I love it. I love it. Super addition to the Beam ecosystem. And also, like, really simple and intuitive to set up these kind of really experimental effects and stuff like that. So I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot of fun with it. Cool, that's about it for today. Big ups to Ben Jordan and Lunacy Audio for creating such a cool update for Beam. And thank you for watching. So if you want to support me, the best way to do so is to either check out some of my products. The links are available in the description below, or checking out my Patreon. Anyway, see you guys next time. Cheers.